Hey everyone, Rodkey again. So, talking to you about analytic paper number 2. First of all, as you saw in a Blackboard announcement this week, the due date for that has been pushed back exactly 1 week, and that's the exact same situation as the last paper, as previous paper, analytic paper number 1. So 1 week, you have an additional week from what is said in the syllabus. As I said in that announcement, little background there, there's a lot more students in the course than was initially planned for, and I think that's a great thing. I'm happy to work with more students and teach this material and so on, but it did change the way time was allocated, my schedule and things of that nature, so it just takes a little more time to keep up with the grading. So that's basically what's going on there. Also, before you submit analytic paper number 2, make sure you go over very carefully anything addressed on analytic paper number 1, and of course the building process, the short writing assignment before that as well. And you're addressing anything that needs to be addressed there. And if you have any questions or issues with anything, just let me know. So analytic paper number 2, the first thing to mention there is a little bit of the background. This, of course, involves a controversial subject in the U.S., which is Mexican migration to the U.S., in particular illegal immigration. And some of you may be, of course, of Mexican heritage yourself, or an immigrant yourself even, or know people who are. But regardless, one way or another, you are aware of this, I am sure. It's on the news quite a bit. And one of the issues here, that's actually, the controversy is actually one of the reasons I choose it as an assignment, because we have a chance to understand, as anthropology students, to understand what's actually happening. And if you listen to a lot of elected officials, politicians, even very high-ranking ones, and also media outlets, you will get a lot of misinformation about this. And it comes down to a politicized issue versus it should be this way, it should be that way. And understanding what actually is going on with that situation is sometimes, just jumped right over. So chapter 2 of the book Labor and Legality, which is what I've reproduced for you and posted on Blackboard, that does a really good job of explaining the history between the political relationship between the United States and Mexico, and also the historical and contemporary, more recent economic factors between those countries and their positions in the global economy that influence this movement of people from Mexico to the United States. Okay, so what you're going to do is kind of uncover what's actually going on there using these anthropological concepts. So it's an essay, as before, so it's essay form, introduction, and so on. And what you're going to do is, as I have my document right here, so make sure I don't miss anything. So what you're going to do is, using that reading, why is there undocumented migration, you're going to explain how the political and economic relationship between the U.S. and Mexico, both historically and contemporarily, influences this migration. And you need to do that using these key terms from the book. So first of all is core and periphery. That's in chapter 11 with regard to the connection between the US and Mexico. That will help set that up. Then the relationship between Fordism, which of course dates back to this state with Henry Ford, and flexible accumulation. Okay, that's also in chapter 11. So that's with regard to how the U.S. economy has changed from the time of the Ford, assembly line model to now. Also, neoliberalism, which includes the material immediately preceding the section called neoliberalism in your text. That's again in chapter 11, and that's titled Capitalism, Economic Liberalism, and the Free Market. So for that, that provides a little further information on how the economy has changed. And it's important to note the term neoliberalism is covered by the author in that chapter on undocumented migration from Mexico as well. Okay, also pushes and pulls and bridges and barriers. Those are terms regarding migration in the global economy, and those are again in chapter 11. And then finally, state, the state as in the political body like the United States and Mexico states, and hegemony, and also agency. Those terms now are in chapter 12. Okay, so the first 4 of those points are all in chapter 11. These are in chapter 12. So that last one, agency there, and hegemony, as you'll see, the idea there is, of course, Mexican migration, which is because individual Mexican people decide to take action and migrate. But what influences that decision? What's driving that? Well, as it turns out, it's more complex than just a person deciding to migrate illegally in this case, but for whatever reason. whatever motivation. And that's something that this kind of analysis can really help provide an understanding of. So it's we never take the accountability off people. In other words, this isn't about blaming society or something of that nature. Not at all. People are accountable, of course, for their actions, but undoubtedly the situation they are in, the circumstances surrounding them, influence various um, you know decisions being made. So I'll give you an example. I when I was growing up, I did not get into dealing drugs on a street corner. I did not get into stealing things. I did not run with a gang or anything of that nature. And the main reason I avoided all those things is because those things did not exist in the area where I was growing up. So it made it really easy to avoid them. Not because I personally am a better person and smarter person and more thoughtful and careful with my decisions than someone who does those things, but rather I didn't even have the option of doing those things, right? So it's about the circumstances and the surroundings. Someone who does have that as an option is obviously going to be more likely to do it. Now, when I say it like that, it seems really simple, but you're probably aware, or you can imagine, people quite often wash right over that. And it's just, that's a bad person, that's a stupid person who made a stupid decision or something like that. Well, yeah, doing that is not a good decision. I would have to agree. But if we want to understand why someone would do that, we need to look at the broader circumstances. And that's what this does. One last thing is in the on the assignment sheet before I get to what I just went over there, the breakdown of what you're supposed to be doing, I explain a little bit about these terms, undocumented and illegal. Some of you may be familiar with this as well. Basically, labeling what we call something is very important to influencing how we think about it. And the act of crossing the border without authorization or overstaying a visa, something like this, is obviously illegal. There's no question about that. Uh, but there's a little more to the reasons why it's illegal, and I make a connection in that document, as you have seen with the case of Rosa Parks, who committed an illegal act by riding on the front of the bus. I mean, black and white. That was the law. She broke it, and she was arrested and incarcerated for that. But if you were to focus on only that, the legality, you would probably be missing a lot about what the Rosa Parks story has to tell us, right? Obviously. And so I'm kind of making an analogy that there's a lot more to this issue than merely the act of than an illegal act being committed, which obviously it is. And applying the label illegal to a person, an illegal alien, an illegal immigrant, and so on, doesn't really follow. That doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? The act is illegal, but the person is not. So my goal is not to influence your thinking one way or another on what you would like to see with regard to Mexican immigration, but it is very much oriented. My goal is oriented to get you to understand what's actually going on, and you are not going to get that very well from a lot of kind of what you might call mainstream accounts. This looks at the history and the economic ins and outs of the situation, which provide much greater understanding of it. Okay, so that's where that comes from. If you have any questions about it, as I say, just be sure to let me know. Okay, well, good luck on the paper, everyone. Remember, it's a week later than indicated on the syllabus, and please do email me or stop by if you have any questions. Thank you.